But I think that, like, I think, Melissa, that you've like hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, it's the fear of failure or the fear of making the wrong decision. And I think that can be so paralyzing, can't it? It can be something that really prevents us from making decisions. But I think, well, sometimes I don't think there is a wrong decision. Sometimes I just think there are lots of decisions and we just have to make one.
A teacher, an innovative education reformer, a female leader, a mentor of some of the most prestigious high school teachers. Caitlin Monday is joining us on another episode of the Ask the Professional series. Caitlin works at the Scots College. She is also the director of the Teaching School Alliance Sydney. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, Alyssa, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Now let's really move to your story. So what did you study at uni?
Yeah, I studied, I started a Bachelor of Education in Arts, and I completed a year in honours in my fourth year of my education degree. And instead of finishing my arts degree, I went straight on and did my PhD.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't quite finish my Bachelor of Arts.
So what did you study as a PhD student?
Yeah, so I looked at drama education, and particularly looking at motivation and engagement in the arts, and the way that arts participation could lead to improved academic outcomes for students. And I particularly looked at drama classrooms where there was a high correlation between participation in the arts and those academic outcomes. Which was an amazing thing to be part of at the time, because there was a big curriculum review happening, and they were trying to work out whether or not the arts should stay in education for students, and this was trying to establish an evidence base for that.
Wow, that's amazing. And why did you choose education at the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think when I was at high school, I wanted something that didn't involve sitting behind a desk, that involved people, and that was dynamic and changing every day. But I think if you ask me now, why do I continue to work in education, I think I would say that it's really about formation for me. And so I think education does something to us and on us as people. And so what a privilege and opportunity to be a part of the formation of young people. I can't think of anything better. Yeah.
Wow. And what are some of the most memorable things you have had as a teacher?
Yeah, I've had lots of memorable moments as a teacher. I had actually a lovely email from a year 12 student just this morning, just thanking me for the way that I had been a person of integrity for him, particularly I teach a comparative religions course, and in the way that I taught that. But I think actually some of my most memorable moments are the moments when students make me laugh. There's lots of laughter, and I think they're usually because boys have done something silly or ridiculous, or just have an excellent sense of humor, or tell me some crazy story. But they're, I think, my most memorable moments.
Yeah, and I think it's really enjoyable as well. And could you tell me like what a typical teacher's day look like?
Yeah, I can tell you what a typical teacher's day looks like. I'm not a typical teacher, and so I will tell you what a typical teacher's day look like, but that's not probably a true reflection of what I do. Most teachers would come to school, probably get organised for the day, and then over the course of that day teach in a secondary school context, probably up to 7 different classes. So if you're thinking about, let's say there's about 25 students in a class, then you're actually probably looking at about, what's 25 times 7? How good's your maths? Maybe 200 plus people in a day that they're kind of trying to get to know. No, that's not right. 200 is not right. What is it? 25 plus 25? 50? That's, oh gosh. Yes, anyway, about 150 people. That's kind of the extent of the number of students they might see from years 7, which is about aged 13, all the way to kind of aged 18 in year 12. And so they would be going every 50 minutes to a different class. They'd probably have lunchtime in the middle, and the day would probably end, and they might have some administration to follow up. They might have some parents to call. They might have some lessons to design and plan for the following day. They might have some meetings with some other teachers regarding some curriculum design aspects or some professional learning programs. They'd grab lunch at some point in there, and probably the day would wrap up at about 4:30.
Wow, that sounds really busy.
It's pretty busy.
And I mean, do we need a degree to become a teacher?
Yeah, you do need a degree to become a teacher. You need a degree in education, and then once you have that degree, usually it's either in primary education or secondary education. You can do that either as an undergraduate course or as a master's course. And then once you have been working within your first year, you usually have to also become accredited through NESA.
Oh, I see. And are there any important characteristics or skills someone wanting to become a teacher must have?
Yeah, good question. I think that there are lots of professional skills that probably are true of whatever area that you work in. So things like being punctual and organised and an ability to work well in teams. So there's all of those different elements that I think are probably true. But I think at the heart of education, you need to have a sense of vocation, which really speaks to the character of a person. And I think that character ought to be something that looks like loving people and really having an imagination for how they might grow and develop, how you might help them and walk alongside them. And that's for staff as well as is for students. But I think also secondarily, I think you have to love learning. You have to love ideas. You have to love thinking. And that's not to say that all teachers look the same in the way that they do that. I think there are lots of different types of teachers who, and so the flavour of a teacher can be very different. But I think you need to really love people, and I think you need to love learning.
Yeah, that's so true. Like being curious about people, students can somehow drive your creativity, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of your role at the Teaching Schools Alliance Sydney, could you please explain a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So at the start of the year, I became the founding director of the Teaching Schools Alliance Sydney. And that role has been really about overseeing the shape and direction of the teaching school, as well as managing the operations of the teaching school. The teaching school was set up really with a vision for teacher formation, so for conducting or providing a really alternate model or pathway into teaching from what you see in most universities. So it's about initial teacher training, and it tries to do that in a way that's immersive and embedded, that's responsive to context. So trainees who start their teacher education degree with us, and we offer that in partnership with Alpha Crucis, which is a Protestant tertiary provider in Australia, will also be employed by a school 1 day a week, working under a mentor teacher, studying their degree in kind of an intensive or online mode or in weekly sessions, and then gathering each week on a Thursday to learn some of the practical skills that link to what it means to be a teacher in a school, in a classroom. And so all of the stuff that they don't teach you that you're expected to learn on the job, we try and do that from the very beginning of someone's degree as they actually experience what that looks like. And then we also have visiting fellows that are part of that program as well. So we try to engage with some of Australia's and the world's kind of leading Christian thinkers and educationalists, and to give them a platform to talk about the way that their philosophy and practice looks, and the trainees get to sit under their thinking.
Mm. Okay. You mentioned a mentor teacher, and how important is mentorship for people wanting to build in their career?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think mentors provide a really significant role in modeling what best practice looks like. They're usually a little further on in their experience within a profession, and so have real wisdom to provide you, real insight to offer. I think also they can be important sounding boards, and at any point in your career, you need that. You need someone to talk with and to speak to about the things that you're experiencing and the things that you're learning in your workplace, and to have someone kind of speak into that, I think, is really significant and important and valuable. Yeah.
That's so true. And have you had any mentors?
Yeah, I have. I've had a range of different mentors in a range of different settings, and they have always been so incredibly important to me, and I think have often been kind of prophetic in the way that they've spoken into my life and the words of truth that they've been able to offer me at different moments or at different points. So I've been really thankful for their input.
Yeah, and I think mentors are the ones who help you find a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's right. And sometimes that they put the emphasis on you trying to work out what that might look like or what that might be. And sometimes they have some really specific guidance as to how you might grow.
Mm-hmm. And as a director or like a leader, what do you think makes a good leader?
Very good question. I think there are lots of things that make a good leader, but I think for me there are kind of three qualities that at least I attempt to exhibit in the way that I lead and that I really admire in other people. And I think the first one of those is a leader ought to be servant-hearted. I think that really speaks to the way that they engage with other people and the way that they go about their work. I don't think there's any job too small for a leader, and I think that's part of the way they exhibit that servant-heartedness and putting others before themselves. I think secondly, a leader ought to have integrity, which is another thing that I think speaks to their character. Actually, you should be able to trust the word of a leader. And I think thirdly, a leader ought to have vision and an imagination for where whoever that we might be, are going, and an ability to kind of bring people on board and capture their imaginations with what might be possible, which is really about hope. I think vision is really about hope, in that it's about seeing what might be, what could be, what ought to be, and being able to articulate that in a way that's really persuasive for people. So servant-heartedness, integrity, vision.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to say that's my takeaway. And I think as a leader, you are exposed to a variety of uncertainty and challenge, or etc. How will you cope with these feelings?
Yeah, good question. Can you just repeat the back end of that question for me, Alyssa?
You, as a leader, you are exposed to a variety of challenge and uncertainty. How will you cope with these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year has been a really good example of that. There's been lots of challenges that have emerged, and I think particularly for us as the Teaching School Alliance, we're kind of like a startup, and so and so much of what we do is based on people being in context, and there have been a number of moments this year where we actually haven't been able to meet together, or students haven't been able to be at schools because schools have been closed down, or we've had to meet online. And so, like, I really think one of the most important things as a leader is that you need to be adaptable and flexible. And so thinking about like, I've just had to have lots and lots of options, and sometimes things might change the morning of a session that we're running, and so you just kind of have to roll with that. and you have to be a non-anxious presence for those that you lead, such that they don't worry, but that you can actually lead them firmly through crisis or change. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's about art of performance to some extent as a leader. And you are a female leader, and how important is to have women in leadership?
Yeah, good question. I think I've wrestled with that a little bit when you sent that through. I think it's really important to have women in leadership, but I think it's important to have women in leadership not because they're women, but because they're really excellent at their job, just like men. And I think if they're really excellent at their job, then actually they will provide the unique insight that they have as women to that context. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And what kind of advice would you give to women wanting to follow in your footsteps?
I think I would say make the most of every opportunity that you are given, and there will be many of those. I think the second thing I would say is try not to presume what other people's perceptions of you are. So don't let your bias or your presuppositions shape the way you think other people are reading you or seeing you. And I think I would say be who you are. I think for women particularly, there's lots of preconceived ideas about what the kind of person you need to be in leadership as a woman, because it's tough or it's hard, and so you need to adopt a particular persona or be a particular way. But I think you will do your work better. You will excel when you know who you are and have integrity in the way that you act on that. And so I think as women, we need to be particularly aware of the degree to which we're succumbing to others' ideas about what a woman ought to be or look like in leadership. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was kind of a little bit of a long-winded response, but I think it's just about be yourself. Work out how you lead and do that really well.
Yes, that's really encouraging, I would say. What is one thing you had learned throughout your career that you wish you knew earlier?
I think one thing that I've learned that I wish I'd known earlier is that you can't predict the pathway that lays ahead. If you had asked me at the age of 20 that I would be doing the role that I'm in now, I would not have believed you. And so there's no way I could have predicted the different opportunities that were given to me, or the different types of work that I would end up doing. I definitely didn't foresee those opportunities. And so I think sometimes we can get so set on, here's my 5-year plan, like plot it all out. But actually, if my 5-year plan, my 10-year plan even looked very different at the age of 20 to what actually transpired.
Oh, that's really helpful. And on the topic of being a teacher, what would you say is the most tough thing?
Yeah, there's lots of tough things about being a teacher. I think the tough thing is that you are always left thinking that you could have done more particularly when you work with people, and particularly if you view your work as about formation, which is really about character, the kind of people they are, not just what they're learning. I think that as a teacher, I've just said goodbye to my year 12 class. And yeah, there's lots of moments where I'm like, I wish I had done this or said this to them, or I could have done more and I could have done better. And I think you always will feel that way. It never feels like the work is complete or finished.
Yeah, and I feel like it applies to actually every area. Like we are lifelong learners and we learn as we go. And then what makes the hard work worthwhile at the end of the day as being a teacher?
I think growth and transformation, like seeing people change, like the students that I taught in year 7 are different from the students that I get to teach in year 12, and to see the way over that period of time they change and develop and grow, to see them arrive at real convictions about who they are and the way that they see and make sense of the world are such a rare and beautiful gift to have, I think. And so, yeah, I think that makes it all worthwhile. Like, it can be really hard slog sometimes, but actually to see the young people and the young adults they are becoming is a real privilege.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Like the students become better because of you. It's
Well, I hope they do because of me, but I don't want to take claim for that. But that's the goal, is that actually that you have this opportunity to impact them and influence them for good, so that they might do good in the world as well.
one. I knew you are education reformer as well, and I think it wants a lot of creativity, etc. And what are some of practical ways to actually build the creativity and even sharpen the skill?
That's a really good question. I think lots of creativity responds to need, whether that's a need to communicate something, i.e. in a kind of an artwork, or a need to respond to a problem or a challenge that exists. And I think, I guess one piece of advice I would give if you're trying to cultivate creativity, is to place yourself in positions where, or in contexts where there are needs, or to find those needs, those challenges, where there aren't existing solutions. And so one of the things that we try to do with the Teaching School Alliance, as an example, is that it responded to a need, a real challenge that exists, partly within the profession of education more broadly, in that actually there's a real problem with teacher retention in education. People don't stay in the profession. But I think even more specifically for Christian schools, there's a supply problem. They can't find excellent educators to kind of to fill their staffing needs. And also what schools find is that they're retrofitting their kind of values work to staff after they're already kind of been through the most formational aspect of their training. And so the Alliance really tried to respond to some of those needs. And so the solution, as it afforded itself to us, was that actually we need a really different model of initial teacher training that puts students in schools, in classrooms from the beginning, at that most formational point of their study, and does so in a way that kind of reflects the kind of Christian values that those schools would like to see embedded and integrated in their staff. And so I guess, to respond to your question, creativity, find those challenge spaces that force you to think differently about the problems that exist, because that will naturally mean that you come up with more creative solutions.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think working with different people, like being exposed to a variety of ways of thinking, also can like activate your creative part, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's completely true, in that it forces you to see things differently, by listening to others and their point of view.
Yeah. And after reflecting on your journey, what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
I would say to my 20-year-old self, care less what other people think.
Oh.
I think for young people, that's a really big deal. Like, actually, I think social pressure is high. I think family pressure can be high. I think people, because of our school system and the way that it's structured, are taught to kind of be compliant to authority. And so they seek the affirmation of those above them. all of which I think means that it's really hard for young people to know themselves and to act with conviction. And so I think I would say my 20-year-old self, care less what other people think, care less about trying to please others.
Oh, that's definitely my takeaway. And do you have any final tip for the students who want to pursue a career in your relevant field?
Yes, I do. The first thing I would say is know your why, know your motivation. Don't enter teaching because you think it's a good job, a stable job. Have a really clear sense of vocation. And the other things I would say is read lots. There's some amazing thinkers, and they ought to influence the way that you see and make sense of the world, and therefore the way that you teach. I would say engage with the world, know the big stuff that's going on and the particular challenges that young people are facing and will be facing. And the third thing I would say, or the fourth thing I would say, is talk to people who are a little further on than you in your career. Make the most of opportunities like this one, where you get to sit down with somebody who's a little bit more experienced and drill them with all the questions that you've got. There's lots of wisdom and insight to be learned from experience, and I would encourage people thinking about teaching to make the most of that.
Thank you so much for your sharing today, and that ends our time here. Thank you for the audience who are watching our show now. For those who are interested in Caitlin's work and how to become a teacher, please contact her via email, and the details is in the description. Remember to join our Facebook group as well to learn more insight from the professional in your field. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. It's been great to speak with you today.
Thank you, my pleasure. Bye. Before. Okay. And then that's like keen to make right decisions somehow makes us like being afraid to take the step. That's kind of the struggle of mine as well.
Yeah. But I think Alyssa, that you've like hit the nail on the head there, right? Like it's the fear of failure or the fear of making the wrong decision. And I think that can be so paralyzing, can't it? It can be something that really prevents us from making decisions. But I think, well, sometimes I don't think there is a wrong decision. Sometimes I just think there are lots of decisions and we just have to make one. I think sometimes you have to make the wrong decision to know the right one, and also to learn what you don't want to do or you don't enjoy doing or you don't think you are called to. And I think that the final thing I would say there, Alyssa, is that I think knowing what's your framework for making decisions is really helpful. So for me as a Christian woman, my desire to glorify God and serve others informs the way that I make decisions, what work I choose to do or don't do, and to know what are the things that are part of your framework, your values that are actually you won't compromise on, regardless of what the decision is. I think is really important because that will keep serving you well at every kind of point at which you have to make a decision. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. This interview is definitely the highlight of my day.
The highlight of my day too, Alyssa.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I think, we have a lot to, we have a lot to learn, and we need to be patient as well in terms of get to know ourselves. And then, being patient is, I would say it's really crucial.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And everything in the world is telling you what's the quickest way that you can get to somewhere, whether that's in your career or even if that's just literally in travel. Everything is saying you need to move quickly, and you need to everything needs to be about how you maximize your potential, maximize your opportunities for growth. But actually, patience is such a beautiful thing because the that's how you gain wisdom. Like, actually, wisdom is really important in that. And there's great humility needed, I think, to be able to acknowledge the experience and the wisdom of those that have gone before you, and to sit under that, to learn from that, to listen well, and to wait, I think, with patience for the opportunities that might come, and then to make the most of those as they do.